Hello everyone and welcome. Welcome to a very special Lenovo C-Suite chat show. I'm your moderator, I'm Rahul. I am the head of content at Jakara Media, and welcome. We do apologize for the delay. We had a couple of technical difficulties. Well, regardless of that, let me just jump right into it. So today we're going to be talking about the smarter transitions to the brave new enterprise, and for that, to kind of expound on that topic, I have with me Kumar from Lenovo. Hi, Kumar. We also have with us Michael from Nutanix. We also have joining us virtually. We have Gary from Capella Hotels. Hi, Gary. And we also have Peter, who is the Chief Group Digital Officer of NUHS. So hi, Peter.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Excellent. So, the brave new enterprise, right, gentlemen? It's been like 2 years of a bad dream in a sense, right? It's the market has completely changed. You know, the consumer behavior has changed. The workforce has changed completely. Yep. So we are in a completely new era, and in a sense, the entire enterprise has sort of broken down and retransformed, in a sense, reconstituted. And we find that the old rules no longer apply. So in that sense, I just want to start off with asking you guys, right? What do you think is maybe the single most important characteristic of this new enterprise? How do you think it's going to go? So maybe Kumar?
Perfect, man. Thanks, Rahul, actually. So as you correctly said, the world has dramatically changed, right? So it's and a lot of the analysts are actually calling this as more of an experience economy rather than a digital economy, right? So if you ask me what's the single most important characteristic of a post-pandemic enterprise would be, I would say, born in digital native businesses will be one of the things, one of the critical developments, and it's sort of tied to the innovation that we need to make, because our entire experience of engaging with our customers are predominantly becoming digital.
Yeah.
The physical part of that physical world of engaging with customers is a very small part of it now.
Yeah.
So, and if you're sort of engaging with your customers predominantly on digital, you will have to continuously innovate to differentiate yourselves.
So basically, that was the trend to begin with, right?
Absolutely.
But do you think the pandemic has sort of accelerated that to a new level?
I would say, somebody said that digital transformation of a decade sort of got compressed in 10 months. Right?
Yeah.
The speed and the scale of it, and that sort of is, it's sort of amplified in terms of the changes that are happening in the e-commerce delivery models, the innovation in fintechs. You have super apps, you have new forms of social media, right? And those sort of are sort of sweeping the entire engagement with customers who are predominantly social and mobile today.
Correct.
So that's what I would say would be one of the single important characteristic of a post-pandemic enterprise would be.
Yeah, and the online models. I mean, it used to be just like brick and mortar and online, right?
Right.
But now it's like you have a dozen different channels just online of engagement.
Right. Absolutely.
And that is it's just it's chaos online in a sense.
Absolutely. And that's going to drive the entire engagement model, right?
Yeah.
You just look at your banking experience, right?
Yeah.
Your entire banking experience has become digital.
Yeah.
When was the last time you walked into a branch and spoke to a customer service officer?
Not in the past 5 years.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Right. You get to engage to a digital platform, you're talking to a chatbot. Yeah. That's your automation, right?
Yeah.
And every time you engage with that chatbot becomes more intelligent to understand better you as a customer.
Yeah.
So those things around AI, automation become so relevant because your experience is entirely digital today.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of it was there pre-pandemic too, but what has happened within the pandemic of the last 2 years, it has sort of accelerated it. The speed and the scale of it has sort of gone to a different level altogether in these 2 years.
Yeah, and I see Michael smiling and nodding about that as well.
I think, to your question, I don't know what the characteristic or the parameter is, but I know what we all experience, and we have hundreds of people out there today from different industries. What we all experienced was an unforeseen change.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, it's like every industry has a slightly different situation they need to deal with.
Yeah.
But what is consistent is none of us saw this coming. So we were talking earlier, and we talked about Donald Rumsfeld, and actually what I found out is it came from a place called Johari Window. So if you don't know what a Johari window is, you can look this up. It It was something that happened in philosophy in the 1950s. But many of you may be familiar with this Donald Rumsfeld scenario about how to analyze a situation. And what he said was, we have known knows, we have known unknowns, and we have unknown unknowns, right? So when we look at our industry and what we do in IT, and you take an example of when we had the pandemic hit, we know when we want to set up virtual desktop, environment for our company. We know how many employees we have. We know how many virtual desktop licenses we need to purchase. We know there will be growth, but we don't know how much. So there's a known unknown. And we can plan for it, but we don't know exactly what will happen. There are also the unknown unknowns. And the unknown unknown that we all experienced was COVID, right? And there are other black swan events that will happen again, and we need to be prepared for it. So instead of the actual characteristics that can impact it today, it's more about how do we approach it? How do we reduce the complexity in our infrastructure so that when these unknown unknowns happen, we're ready to move fast and nimble? And when I look at the headwinds today in the global economy, the supply chain disruptions that we're all experiencing, many of you out there may have had what we've heard or termed the Great Resignation, where we're losing really good people in our companies, and we need to find someone else that can go and manage those infrastructures. These are all things that we have to cope with. If we reduce the complexity, we will have a better opportunity to solve our problems more quickly. So to me and to the audience, I would always say, like, every week, take a little time out and think about what are those unknown unknowns that we don't even know about, and then how do we continuously reduce the complexity in our environment? We do those two things consistently, we'll be ready for the next thing that comes.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that the entire scenario was talked about by Rumsfeld in a war-like situation, right? It was a security scenario. And what many countries have experienced is basically a war-like scenario with COVID.
Absolutely.
So I think those particular parameters really come into play.
Right.
The paradigm is perfect. So let's hear from, maybe we can hear from Gary first. Gary, in your the way that you guys are in the hospitality business, so that is it's been on the front lines of COVID. So how has it been? How has the transition been for you guys so far?
So I totally agree that the technology has become very crucial. Can you hear me? So I totally agree that the technology has become very crucial during the pandemic. And we have been engaging the customer digitally and also created a contactless hotel experience due to the safety measure. And we have also seen the spike in the demand of food delivery services. Consumers are willing to pay for the services to have food delivered at their doorstep, even though it happened in a hotel, restaurant. And it had dramatically changed the consumer behavior and expectation toward digital platform. And these changes are, I believe, expected to be long-lasting.
And it's been a transformational time for food delivery, especially.
It's convenience, too.
It is
You learned a
convenience.
new way to consume, and it's actually more convenient in some instances.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, it was completely unthinkable. I mean, deliveries used to cost like 5 times as much.
Absolutely, and that's what is all about innovation, right?
Yeah.
Innovation using digital technologies and technology as a back end to leverage all this, right?
Yeah.
Leverage and reach out to your customers, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting development. Actually.
Yeah. So Peter, from your perspective, another industry on the front lines of COVID, massive healthcare system in Singapore. I think Singapore dealt with it pretty well compared to most of the other countries. So how has it been for you guys?
Yeah, so I think for us, the period has been a good one for digital transformation, and given us the opportunity and the impetus to make changes and drive our transformation forwards. I think in terms of the post-pandemic enterprise, what I would expect to see is that organizations increasingly need to be digital first. That customers or patients will go first to the digital channel in terms of their first interaction with an organization. And that for healthcare, that, for example, could mean telemedicine services where patients can consult with doctors remotely. So that's been a big feature during the pandemic period, and is likely to continue post-pandemic. And then also potentially patients also receiving services at home. So for example, NUHS have an NUHS at home service whereby patients with low acuity or suitable conditions can receive treatment at home. And then I would expect also to see continuation of hybrid working, where staff can work flexibly from either office or home, where meetings are hybrid enabled with easy to use video conference and screen sharing technology, for example, and where staff can connect either via messaging platforms or by mobile phone with their colleagues, irrespective of where they are. And linked to that, I think hot desking is likely to become more prominent as companies look to optimize office space, having had this period where so many people were working from home. And then finally, to the point around employee satisfaction, I think organizations are going to be putting more emphasis on that, on managing the employee community and ensuring that the employees stay as part of the team and feel part of the overall community and bonded with the rest of the organization.
I think across industries, right? I think one of the points that he talked about is telemedicine. I think what the pandemic has done is basically made a nice to have things into a necessity, right? I mean, it used to be that telemedicine, especially in Singapore, wasn't a big thing at all, right. And now it is a central part of how healthcare is delivered in many ways.
And it's not about telemedicine only; it's about teleconsultation, right?
Yeah.
And you have got an access. So just imagine the entire what has digital medium has done is, you have now got an access to doctors not limited to only to your community or your locality or your country.
Yeah.
The entire knowledge pool is now shared across globally.
Correct.
So if there's any complex situations to be dealt with, you can access an advice of a specialist who could be sitting somewhere remote. So this entire medium has enabled you to get the best of the information, the best of the expertise from anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what the extension is. It's gone beyond from telemedicines to teleconsultation. I would not be surprised if telehealth actually happens.
Yeah.
And then at some point of time, a lot of stuff might happen virtually.
Telesurgeries.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I was actually sort of reading through some documentation which was saying that surgeries are happening remotely too.
Yeah.
So that's one industry innovating itself. And just imagine if there, good, bad, if there was no COVID, how long would that innovation taken?
Correct.
But by virtue of COVID, that entire innovation has taken 10 months to come through, right? So
absolutely. Absolutely.
It's good. Right?
I mean, I'd almost add to that, and like we look at the audience out there today.
Right.
No matter what industry you're from,
Right.
you hear these stories from one industry to another.
Absolutely.
And you think, okay, well, that doesn't really apply to me because I'm in the IT industry. But then you realize, actually, it does.
Yeah,
and I learned so much from the different industries. You know, we talk about edge computing. Edge computing from the IT side is a little bit more broad, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But when I hear Peter talking about diagnostics, you know, and real-time information coming to wherever you are when you need it, if you can't get to a hospital, which was the traditional way.
Right.
These are technologies that we can all learn from each other, regardless of industry.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, because we've all learned something new and tried something new, and out of that opportunity, or out of that problem comes opportunity.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Brilliant. So we've talked about the characteristics of the post-COVID enterprise, right? So now let's get a sense from the audience. So we're going to have an audience poll launching. So this is the time for the audience to make their thoughts known. So in terms of what are the massive roadblocks, right, to the transition to the post-COVID enterprise? So that's something that we're going to ask the audience. And it looks like the lack of technology investment and refresh is at the top there.
That must be a lot of IT people. Running more budget, right?
No, actually, yeah. It's sort of a bias sample, isn't it?
Yeah.
Asking the IT folks whether do you get enough money for technology investment. Of course, they're going to say no.
But the interesting comment there is that we'll go through this poll and then we can talk about it. But there is nothing. There is no longer a concept of a technology company anymore. Every business today is a technology business.
Yeah.
Right? think about your ride-sharing business. Think about an EV company. Think about a healthcare company. They are all in technology business.
Yeah.
And so.
Can the audience see the poll results?
I think quite shortly.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
They'll be able to see it.
We see it coming up on our
Yeah.
screen here, so it's interesting.
So the lack of technology investment and refresh is the majority.
Right.
I mean, that is interesting, isn't it? I mean, of course, it's good news for you guys,
Right.
Because that's something that is very necessary, obviously.
Right.
But it seems like the difficulty in adapting to new ways of hybrid work. I think that is the second biggest one.
Right.
And operational issues and legacy workflows. So those are
Right.
the top three.
Right.
Any thoughts on difficulty in adapting to new ways of work? I think that's something that we talked about a little bit.
Okay.
But why do you guys think that there might be such a difficulty?
Yeah, so let me try to tackle the first one, actually, the lack of investment, technology investment, and that was the point, right?
Yeah.
Technology investment. I think it's fairly subjective, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of, because what we are seeing within our sort of marketplace is, as I was talking about, there's a significant focus on real transformation to be digital first.
Yeah.
Okay. And organizations are taking bold steps in sort of making that transformation. Because one of the things that you need to understand, and that sort of links back to the second point of the hybrid workforce, is if you are not making the investment into that digital first, one is you lose your competitive advantage or competitive differentiator in your own marketplace. That's one.
Yeah.
Secondly, it is also you lose your ability to attract and retain talent.
Yeah.
And that sort of links back to the hybrid workforce. So I would say that when I see from my sort of a scenario, I see that of a less of a challenge today. It's more of a question of where are they investing in. Are they investing in the right priorities or the right places, which I would see a lot of our customers actually doing it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, technology does underpin and sort of underwrite that transformation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everything is sort of underpinned on a technology.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's absolutely, yeah.
Michael, your thoughts on why that might be possibly?
I think investment's a function of making good investments.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I'll say it 100 times
Right.
during this discussion or any other discussion, reducing complexity will get you to a place where your investments are maximized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've been at Nutanix 7 years. Before that, I worked at VMware for 6 years. And the thing we did at VMware is we extracted the virtual from the physical.
Yeah.
And that virtualization allowed companies to go and do things that they never could do before from an efficiency standpoint. 2% CPU, except for at the end of the month when they had to do something, up to 90% CPU usage, right? That allowed the investments to be much more efficient. Virtualization technology is prevalent now, so that's something. But hyperconverged came along and said, now why don't you consolidate the three things that are costing you a lot of money in monolithic 3-tier environments? That technology allowed you to become more efficient and more nimble in your investments and also your ability to do the things that you need to do for your business, not for your IT infrastructure.
Yeah.
So how do you make your applications easier? I think we always have to look at what the new technologies are allowing us to do.
Yeah.
So that if our budgets are reduced, we still have an investment that allows us to maximize our application, development and ultimately our business success.
Yeah, and the point that you made about virtualization, right? I think that is the way forward, right? The abstraction away from hardware. I think that's going to enable so much. I mean, it has already.
Yeah.
But
that's done. That was 10 years ago, right? Now, how do you maximize the use of that?
Yeah.
And then go and do the next great thing, right? So,
and in about 3 decades, we have Skynet, Terminator style, and let's see what happens there.
Absolutely.
So from Gary and Peter's side, any thoughts on the top single sort of impediment to transformation was technology, lack of investment in technology. Any thoughts on why that might be, or is that something that you guys have experienced as well? Gary, your thoughts maybe?
I don't think the investment will be the roadblock for digital transformation, because during pandemic, business had no choice and already been invested in those technology areas. And then moving forward, the company or enterprise will still continue to use those technologies since it already invested. And this will be, I don't think will be the roadblocks for most of the enterprise. This is just my thought.
what has been the biggest roadblock from the Capella Hotels group side? Oh, you can't hear me? Gary, can you hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay, great.
Yes, I can hear you.
I was just wondering, like, from hotels group side, what has been the biggest impediment when it comes to digital transformation, especially through the pandemic?
I would say the user education, the adoption rate, because all these years being a hotel business, it's been manual a lot in a lot of area. Example, both operation area, housekeeping, F&B. So for the employee to adapt or to learn those new technology, it might take some time, but it will happen very soon, I believe, because after the lesson learned after the pandemic, people know that this is very crucial in order for the business to carry on the business by using technology.
So yeah,
Sorry, I think Gary makes a very pertinent point.
Yeah.
Any technology or any innovation that you make in your infrastructure or in your enterprise or any changes that you make in your business, critical is that your users are educated, enabled, and adopted.
Yeah.
And I think the big chunk of focus has to be on the user trainings and user enablement and on why does it make sense for the business.
Yeah.
And it's so relevant for the hospitality business that Gary was referring to. It was so manual in nature.
Yeah.
And we have seen that ourselves, right? But now it is completely automated, digitally engaged. Every engagement is digitally enabled. So it's a big change, and that's where the users needs to buy into it.
Yeah.
The actual users within the enterprise.
And the thing is, there's so much inertia, right? When something new comes into play, there's a massive amount of inertia. Unless it reaches a certain user, number threshold, it just doesn't get adopted. So that's a very relevant point.
It's a very valid point. Yeah.
Peter, from your perspective, what has been the biggest roadblock in terms of transformation of NUHS?
I think, so I guess, obviously this has been a very busy time for us operationally. But I think in terms of challenges with regards to digital transformation, the big challenge is complexity. So when you want to implement a digital solution or implement a new IT system, that has to fit within the existing IT landscape. Which leads to the requirement for integration, back to source systems, and complexity in those systems means that it can take time to implement, to put those integrations and interfaces in place, and those have to be worked through in order to get that new system, the new business processes in place.
That's a very valid point. Complexity is something that is, I think, underappreciated. You can't just buy the shiny new box and then just put it in place and expect it to go well.
Absolutely.
And the complexity, it kind of touches on leadership, it kind of touches on technology, kind of touches on workflows.
Absolutely.
It's a mix of all. So I think it's a very good point.
So we all agree complexity is the number one cost.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, the larger your enterprise, the more multinational, the more global, the worse it gets.
Yep.
Actually, it's an interesting paradox. As your business grows, it also drives complexity, and complexity kills growth. It's an very interesting paradox, actually.
Sounds like a Sadish comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we have another paradox, right? I think there's it's a bit of a question from the audience. So audience, you guys can just pump in your questions anytime, and we'll take them. So this is another paradox, right? Which is that there is you got to sell. And the market is down, so you don't have the investment for technology. So how do you sort of, you gotta keep the lights going on. You gotta innovate, and yet that's the worst point of sales you ever had as an enterprise in decades, possibly. So any way of resolving this?
I think it depends on what industry you're in.
Yeah.
You see some that said, you know what, my ability to sell or do my business now has been, diminished because of this. Others have come up and said it created an entirely new business.
Yeah.
Others have said I've morphed my business into something else.
Yeah.
So we talk about food delivery, you talk about automated ordering systems, etc. So I think it's to all of us out here, we're all dealing with a situation where there's an opportunity in there. Whatever business we run, how do you find that opportunity and then say, actually, we are able to be more profitable, to sell more to our customers? The cost of travel to do business, right, has obviously been taken out of
almost zero
the expense of a company. So have you been able to sell more successfully, and has technology like this allowed us to do it? I think we all say absolutely. So the question is, find the goods, understand the ones that have gone away. Are these going to come back? Maybe yes, maybe no.
That's a very good point, right? Go ahead.
I'll give you an example just to add to what Mike was saying. Mike is saying it correct, rightly. I'll give you an example. We had this customer in Philippines. They have got multiple properties in hospitality industry. And they were making this massive decision of investing into a completely new infrastructure, refreshing their existing infrastructure into a new infrastructure with an all digital interface. And one of the conversations I was having with the CIO, and I was asking him the same question, that I know you are sort of completely impacted by your business. Your sales would have plummeted. Why are you making this investment? So he was very pertinent and very clear that if I don't make the investment now, when the business actually turns around, I will not be ready. I would actually lose out my competitive advantage when the business actually turns around. And I can see the business turning around in 6 to 9 months' time. So I want to take this opportunity, take this downtime to actually get myself ready for the next phase of growth that is coming. And the next phase of growth is going to be very different. Okay, the next phase of engagement with the customers is going to be very, very different from what you have been doing pre-COVID. So I think that there are a couple of ways of looking at it. Somebody would not invest at all. Just probably say cash is king, let me store all the money in and just hold on to it. But other customers are actually going ahead and investing because they want to be ready for the next one.
It's very true. So let's hear from the end users, right? I want to hear from Gary and Peter. So Gary, I mean, obviously, for hospitality and hotels, it was a massive downtime over the past couple of years. I think now, hopefully after the Omicron nightmare, we are looking at the beginning of the end of the pandemic, I would say. So was this the right time for you to transform? Have you guys put more energy into transformation, or was it a sort of time to lie low and consolidate? How was the transformation, entire transformation paradigm seen during the pandemic for you guys?
So for hospitality, obviously there's a big transformation or massive transformation during the pandemic, because of the safety measure implemented. Then the operation have no choice to adapt the mobile technology, especially in mobile technologies, to engage with the guests or the employee. And a lot of the new initiative took place during that time, including we see those mobile contactless check-in, mobile key, contactless service requests, digital dining menu, digital store selling brand merchandise. And those are hardly seen before pandemic. This is based on my experience.
Point, isn't it? I mean, you had all these airlines basically having transforming their airplanes into restaurants.
Absolutely.
And that was it was sold out. It was sold out. It's incredible.
You could actually order a menu from Singapore Airlines and they will deliver to your house.
Correct.
Just think about it.
And it was very fine food from what
absolutely. The fine dining, right?
So that's something, and
it's transformation, right? You have to survive, so you have to find a way to survive, right?
Correct.
Simple as that.
Right. I hadn't thought of that. Peter, from your perspective, and we actually have a question for Peter as well, but let me get his perspective first.
Yes, for us, the pandemic period has been a good one for digital transformation. Some of those elements we had planned for before the pandemic started, and we were following through. So an example there is our One NUHS mobile application, which we went live with in December 2020. So that was planned ahead of time, obviously, and that provides patients with the ability to book appointments, to request repeat medications, to view their lab results and make payments and so on. So that's one example which was planned. At the same time, it also accelerated some other initiatives such as telemedicine. So there we were obviously doing more telemedicine and teleconsultations during the pandemic period, and we ramped that up. And we also took the opportunity to build that into the One NUHS app. So as we started to introduce video consultations, we saw that those offered a number of benefits to patients and to our doctors in terms of better interaction. At the same time, they had some frictions. And by putting it into the app, we were able to have the whole patient journey there, from viewing the appointment through to registering, attending the consult, and then arranging for delivery of medications, and finally making payment, all in one place in the app. So these sorts of things were driven forward by the pandemic period.
Brilliant. Again, another very interesting point, which is that so many of the investments made previously came to fruition during the pandemic.
Right.
So it was a happy accident for a lot of people. Peter, there's a question for you specifically when it comes to teleconsultation from the audience. So actually the question is from Malaysia, and the observation from one of the Malaysian CIOs from the healthcare sector is that the teleconsultation was actually only popular with the foreign patients. It wasn't really that popular with the locals. So she wants to know a little bit about how popular it was, what the adoption was like, and whether it was taken up quite willingly by the locals.
Thanks, Randy, for that. It's good.
Yes, so it has been popular with local patients. We were obviously promoting it to patients as well, such that we could have better social distancing, less crowding in our clinics, and so on. So we were promoting it to patients from that perspective. When I look back to when I started on the telemedicine journey with NUHS up until now, we've more than doubled the number of teleconsultations that we're providing per month, and so it has provided popular with patients, and also across a broad spectrum of patients. Many expect that teleconsultation will be most popular with the young. Equally, some of the older patients are also open to teleconsultation, and enjoy the convenience of not having to travel to the hospital in order to talk to the doctor.
That's interesting as well. So it seems like in Singapore it's quite popular, just as much as Malaysia, if possibly even more. Yeah. That's really interesting. So actually, let's now get into some of the technologies themselves, right? So we have the audience poll number 2. If you could have the audience poll come up. And so what is the single most important talking point when it comes to IT infrastructure in your view today? So let's have a look at that. So the options are edge computing / networking, hybrid and multi-cloud, sustainability, and move to IT as a service approach, among all the others. So it seems like the early results are hybrid and or multi-cloud.
Yeah. What's that first one?
Edge computing.
Yeah. So that is hybrid and multi-cloud. Huh? So it's really the age of the cloud in a sense. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll let Mike talk about it.
I got a strong opinion about it.
I'll let Mike talk about it. But so cloud has been there for a long time. It's an operating model, right?
Yeah.
So it's been there. I think it's evolved over a period of time.
Yeah.
Now you're in a scenario of where you're looking at looking at your application landscape.
Yeah.
And what's the best fit for that application, right? That's one. Secondly, how can you sort of build a seamless experience across, if I may say, call it multiple clouds.
Yeah.
And when you say cloud, it doesn't necessarily means in a hyperscaler. It can be actually within your data center. You can build the same experience like a cloud-like experience, which could be your private data center, which could be your private cloud.
Yeah.
So you can have some applications sitting in your private cloud, some applications sitting outside on the off-prem.
Yeah.
So that's where it is going. I think it's going towards multi-cloud, and things like orchestration, management, security will become so critical as you drive the adoption on hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. But before Mike takes over, I know Mike has tons of opinion on that. I just want to quickly touch upon the second one, the edge computing one.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it didn't sort of get so many sort of responses on that, but if you ask me, the next evolution of data center is going to happen where the action is.
Yeah.
Is going to happen where the data is created. And that's what I think what edge computing will drive. Edge computing is all about having a new form factor.
Yeah.
Can I have a new form factor which can be sort of run on its own, doesn't require any IT staff to run it. It can be shipped to that site, connected remotely through a wireless or through a 5G, and just gets up and started running on its own.
And you don't need a warehouse for it, right? It can be the size
It doesn't
of a
require
fridge.
an IT staff, it doesn't require anything, and it has the ability to store, collect, analyze the data and deliver the insights that you require.
Yeah.
So think about your smart cities, think about your smart electricity grids, think about your smart water system, think about your smarter maps. Everything can be is driving on the edge. Like even your healthcare. Healthcare, if you have to drive at an edge, you will have to also invest in edge computing. So edge computing, I would believe, the next decade belongs to edge computing.
Yeah.
So that's sorry, Mike. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're right. Both are top of mind subjects, right?
Absolutely.
Multi-cloud management, edge computing.
Yeah.
And when we look at multi-cloud management, to me and we always say this at Nutanix, it's you have predictable workloads, and you have unpredictable workloads. So when you aren't sure what that application is going to require, have elasticity. Go to a public cloud, be able to expand or contract, more likely expand, and use that until that workload becomes predictable. When it becomes predictable, I'll ask the audience out there, because you guys probably both use your own data centers and a public cloud. When it's a predictable workload, it tends to become more expensive in a public environment. So you might say, at that time, I'm going to bring this back into our own data center. And then you may find some more unpredictability, and you see bursting into a public cloud makes sense again. But it's not just this or that. And you have to have the ability to manage a multi-cloud environment. So if you have that substrate that allows you to move a workload into and out of an Azure, an AWS, on-prem, your local provider, if there's data sovereignty issues, right? This is what we all want as our Mecca. It exists today in some form, right? And Nutanix is known for hyperconverged infrastructure, but really that multi-cloud management is what we've said is the holy grail for all of us to manage our workloads wherever they make most sense. So look at economic advantage, do economic analysis, decide where that workload should go, and then be able to move it where you want and move it back when you need to. I think this is what we're all looking for, and it exists in some form today. So if you haven't tried it, go and talk to Kumar and his team, talk to the Nutanix team. We can show you some examples of where customers have had a lot of success in this.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. It's a very good summary of the evolution of edge computing. So from the end user side, right? I'd love to know, is it the same for you guys, which is the hybrid and multi-cloud being the overwhelming sort of talking point for you guys as well? Maybe Gary, your opinion on that, maybe?
I do agree that cloud computing is still prominent or still in use most of the time for our businesses because of the remote workload and also the introduction of 5G networks had significantly encouraged the people to use the cloud technology. That's my thought.
I think 5G would be a whole session in itself. I mean, the kind of changes that's going to bring about to the enterprise.
I'll put an interesting twist to it. There is an application filed in US by all the airlines to switch off the 5G because that might sort of interfere with the airlines' aviation systems.
Right.
So interesting times ahead.
Interesting times ahead.
So we might have a different discussion on 5G later.
We can all have some tinfoil.
Google that because that news is recent. Like all the airlines are worried that.
Brilliant. Peter, from your perspective, the biggest talking point we saw was hybrid and multi-cloud. The second one was edge. Actually, surprisingly enough, it was sustainability, and the third was edge computing and networking, which was very close. So, your thoughts on that, Peter?
Yeah, I would definitely see things moving in the direction of hybrid cloud. Here in public healthcare in Singapore, we're at early stages when it comes to cloud adoption. Our One NUHS app, for example, makes use of hybrid infrastructure with some elements on public cloud, and the more private secure elements sitting within our data center behind the NUHS firewall. And I would see increased use of hybrid cloud in similar manner going forwards across industries. I think there will still be many things which people want to keep within their own data centers, whilst making use of the flexibility of the cloud for other items. Of course, sustainability will also be a hot topic going forwards, with data centers, of course, being large energy consumers.
Point of sustainability, actually. Interestingly, this came up as a conversation with a couple of the CIOs that I spoke to in the last 3 weeks. And you know all the sort of the right noises made around the COP26 that recently happened in Glasgow,
yes,
in Scotland, right? So I think organizations are looking to build sustainable businesses or sustainable processes,
yeah,
which helps us to sort of decarbonize the entire world, right? And the businesses and the organizations are moving towards that direction. And the most important thing, what I liked about it, is this entire sense of accountability of putting a time of when we want to become net zero. And so in an environmental sort of a commitment, accountability becomes very critical because you're putting a timeline and an ownership to drive that. So sustainability and the ESG practices will become a very, very critical conversation, more so with CIOs as we go forward.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So I think we've had not just one, but multiple people talk about security,
Yes.
right? So multi-cloud security.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I think from, if you have a single cloud and you have very strong SLAs with that
Right.
provider, and
Right.
the rules and responsibilities are well sort of demarcated.
Right.
I think that's okay.
Right.
But once you have the multi-cloud and you have the digital supply chain,
Right.
and the weakest link in the chain is always the one that breaks it, right?
Right.
So when it comes to a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud scenario, what are some of the things to keep in mind when it comes to security?
So Mike can touch upon the multi-cloud security part of it, but I just want to talk about security. It's, it becomes a more relevant conversation even when it was a single cloud.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because today you're talking about a user can access any applications from anywhere on any devices.
Yeah.
Right? That means every time you have to authenticate every device and also the user profile or the user hierarchy, what application they can access and what are their access rights within that application. And the more importantly, today the security threats are no longer just what we call as north to south. That means it's no longer coming from outside. Security threats are also east to west, which means within applications, within your organization's perimeters,
Yeah.
there could be security threats. And they are also dynamic in nature. So yes, security is clearly one of the most important consideration as you sort of drive digital transformation.
Yeah.
And because you have to look at your entire security surface area, identify what are the threats are,
Yeah.
and then sort of implement the right set of technologies to ensure your users are protected. More importantly, your data is protected, because that's your currency of the world, right? So, Mike.
Yeah.
No, it's exactly right. I think we got to look north, south, and east, west.
Right.
And securing the application wherever it goes is look at the technology that does that. Doesn't have like when we talk about microsegmentation as an example, and everybody knows about that, and we've been talking about that for years. But
Right.
what's the analogy we use? Breaking into the house versus breaking into a room.
Yeah.
Once you get into the house, the rooms are all open, right? If
Yeah.
you have a security that's
So, Michael, when it comes to stuff like the hybrid multi-cloud, obviously, for someone who's just getting into it, what are some of the approaches like? What do you start moving first, or how do you design
do
the
an
whole
analysis?
blueprint?
Like I think for the people out there that are IT
Yeah.
specialists, you can look at what are your costs of running a specific application in a specific place. And I think a lot of us have tools. I know we have tools online. I think Lenovo has tools online as well. You can go in there and do an economic analysis.
Yeah.
And say, okay, if I run this workload with these parameters, how
Yeah.
much is it costing me in this cloud versus this cloud versus this cloud? Just do an economic analysis. Say, okay, there is a difference. Tell me how I can transition, if I choose to transition.
Yeah.
But start with the basics of just saying, do I even know if there's a cost benefit, from one cloud to another? And there are tools out there that, if you haven't done that, that's a great starting point.
Yeah, excellent. So I think we have only about 5 minutes or so left. So let me get to the third audience poll now. So looking to the future, right? So there's a lot of technologies coming into play. I think it's really a golden period in a certain sense for enterprise tech, right? We've got 5G coming up, blockchain, IoT. At some point, we're going to have quantum computing coming up. There's going to be a whole new can of worms being opened up. So which technology will be the key to unlocking the brave new enterprise in the future? So we've got AI and cloud computing, hybrid and multi-cloud, edge computing, serverless, and Kubernetes enabling blockchain.
Interesting.
So again, hybrid and multi-cloud.
Yeah. Yep.
There we go. Followed by AI and cloud computing. So hybrid and multi-cloud again, the basic structure of that, and then further AI within that entire structure. And then serverless is, interestingly enough, number 3. Any thoughts on that, gentlemen? So hybrid and multi-cloud, I think obviously that is sort of the the backbone of the entire affair.
Right.
And then on top of that, you have AI and serverless coming into play.
So let me comment on AI actually, and I think we have been talking about this entire process of converting our engagement models to being digital, right?
Yeah.
Where the entire economy would be more like an experience economy, right? So if you really have to drive customer experience and delightful customer experience through digital mediums of engagement, artificial intelligence is actually one of those key differentiators or key leverages for you, because it helps you to understand your customers better, so that you can serve them better for the next time they come and engage with the platform. And it's sort of going back to that entire discussion on a banking digital platform talking to a chatbot. Chatbot is an example of an automation and AI combined, right?
Yeah.
So every time you engage with that platform and you ask questions, the chatbot becomes more intelligent and more relevant, so that they come back, and the next time when you come back and engage, they would give you more relevant answers. So the entire engagement process becomes far more relevant, and it is also a competitive differentiator, because every time you engage on a digital medium, you have to differentiate yourselves with your peers in your marketplace. Because it's a crowded marketplace. Digital marketplace is crowded. There is no definitions of borders anymore. It's a borderless marketplace, right? So I think that's where I think AI becomes so relevant. And we are actually seeing in businesses, in processes, in systems, organizations are looking significantly, seriously on investments around AI. Looking at their applications, looking at their processes, what they can automate it, what they can actually leverage AI to drive predictive analytics, understand their consumers better or the customers better. So they're making those right set of investments on that. So
Totally agree with what Kumar says.
Absolutely.
Automate as much as you can.
Absolutely. And AI is a fundamental aspect of that. So maybe we can hear from Gary and Peter as well. Gary, your thoughts on the key technology to unlocking the brave new enterprise. The audience response was hybrid and multi-cloud, AI, and then serverless and edge. For you guys, what is the key technologies from your perspective?
So from my perspective, I would think AI will be the big thing to make a big change to the ecosystem. But before having AI, the common practice, typically we will have all the data on cloud. So since we already have those data or system on cloud, then it will be easier for us to plug in an AI component into it. And then in order to study a behavior of our guests, and then to provide a better service for their future state. Thank you.
Building blocks, right? You got the hybrid multi-cloud block, and then you got the AI block.
Absolutely.
And it just piles up after that.
Build your foundation and then run your apps on it.
Yeah. Peter, from your perspective, your thoughts on the responses as well as from NUHS, what do you guys think are the key technologies in unlocking the brave new enterprise?
Yes, I think that AI will be a key technology going forwards, and as Gary mentioned, having the data ready and available to enable that AI will be also increasingly important. And AI can provide benefits in so many different areas through providing analysis to opening up new interpretations. So I think that will be a key area, supported by the necessary data and the necessary infrastructure.
In terms of the technologies that you guys, there's obviously IoT in healthcare is a big thing. 5G is going to be also a big thing when it comes to teleconsultation, etc. So from your perspective, what are the things you're looking forward to, Peter?
Yeah, so AI is one of those, and we are building an AI platform, which will be called Endeavor, which will enable us to interpret data and provide advice to some of our staff. Then we are also working on holomedicine and the use of holographic technologies again to support training, for example, of staff in techniques, and then to support that holomedicine, we're also looking at 5G technology to be able to transmit that data around our campuses.
Brilliant. So holomedicine, it's
interesting. Yeah. I need to go up and search for it and learn about it.
Yeah.
To be honest,
but with the metaverse coming up, I think it's going to be.
So Rahul, just think about metaverse. You will have a lifelong digital version of yourself, even after you're gone.
What a frightening idea!
Absolutely frightening.
Frightening indeed.
People can still look for you, man. So I'm actually looking forward to that metaverse conversation actually next time.
Yeah. So I think we are almost near the end. So
right.
Oh wow, you have a massive endorsement from one of.
Hey, so Mike knows him personally.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so just looking forward to 5 years, 10 years down the road. Do you guys think that we are ready for another such massive black swan event or disruption? And if not, what can be done to make ourselves ready for it?
So just one thing I'll say.
Yeah.
I hope we have learned the lessons of this one.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have to start respecting the place that we call our home, it as our home, which is our Mother Earth, right?
Yeah.
And this is the only place that we can live, by the way. So I might
Elon Musk gets ready.
I might sound philosophical here, but that entire sustainability commitment has to be followed through.
Yeah.
People committing 2030, people committing 2040, 2050 for net zero needs to be followed through. Otherwise, there will not be a place to live for our future generations.
Yep.
And there will be multiple pandemics coming through. That's the nature's way of equalizing us, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way I would say.
I mean, that's the outcome we want, right? And to me, it's how do we think about this and approach it? Right. I've lived in Singapore for quite a while now, and I moved here when SARS hit, right? So those of you in Singapore remember SARS, but other countries were equally impacted. When the government started to face the COVID situation, they looked back on what they did to alleviate SARS in the country and manage it. And I think all of us, we don't look back in hindsight and remember what we learned and then become better for the next scenario that we face. So I think this is our opportunity to say, okay, let's evaluate what happened, how we approached it, how we beat it, how we excelled in it, and then apply that for when the next opportunity to use that thinking comes along. Like I mentioned the unknown unknowns. It's something that I was thinking about just for the last hour and a half. And for me, like the action I want to take out of this day is, and we all should take one action, right? We always take one action out of any time we spend together. Really think about what those unknown unknowns could be, and then have I prepared my environment or my company to be able to manage through that as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So like that's my takeaway from my action for myself. Yeah. One day a week, spend an hour and really think about what are the unknowns that could impact my business, and then how would I correct for it.
It's a great way of unlocking innovation in your own head, right? In a sense, yeah. Exactly. But also, the fact that the bigger the enterprise or the bigger the entity, I think the shorter term the memory is. So it's like large enterprises don't remember because there's so much churn and there's so much change, their memory is really short term. So I think that's an interesting point.
What is RC's full name? Paganid Panagivich, it's cut off.
Yeah, so let's get perspectives from Gary and Peter as well, right? So some closing remarks from you guys in terms of getting ready for the next pandemic. Are we ready? Are we ready for, it might not be a pandemic, it might be some other event. Are we ready for the black swans, and have we learned our lessons from COVID? So Gary, your thoughts maybe?
So the pandemic has been happening for 2 years. So there was enough of time for us to retain and to develop a better version of a crisis management plan for the business and also for our personal life. I think, after this prolonged pandemic, we are pretty much ready for the next one. Yeah, touch wood, it won't happen soon. Thank you.
Yeah, but also, from a hotel perspective, he's really optimistic, which is brilliant, right?
Brilliant, actually.
We want the hospitality and the medicine industry to be optimistic. I think that is a boon to all of us. Peter, your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think we're in a much better position now, having adopted new technologies, providing digital front door to patients, providing remote services to them via telemedicine, and we also have ongoing plans to continue in that vein and make those offerings richer going forwards. Also, even outside of technology, I think, across businesses, the pandemic has taught us all to be able to embrace change and to be more flexible in what we offer to our customers.
So I think being flexible and also being able to improvise. I think that's such a massive.
I think the pandemic has taught us to be more human. Actually, you miss the simple things in life today, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
About shaking hands with somebody.
Yeah.
Right? We know you can't do it today.
Yeah. Correct.
Right? So it's
Correct.
like it's made us more human today.
Yeah.
After 2 years, hopefully it has made us more human.
Hopefully.
I hope so. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we are almost out of time. So
Perfect.
if you can have the feedback forms for the.
Really insightful what I heard from Peter and Gary.
Yeah.
And I know one thing to learn for me is to go back and learn what holographic medicine means. Actually. I need to go and learn that part of it. So that was a great insight actually to me. But I enjoyed the conversation. I think
Excellent.
I liked it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Michael, your
I just say
closing
thank
thoughts?
you to everyone that's been active in the chat and your questions, and we'll look at the chat after the show and get back to you on any questions that weren't answered. But we always love your participation, and everybody's sharing ideas. We're all coming from different areas, but we're all experiencing something similar. So let's continue to share our ideas and help each other make this world a better place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think in closing, what Kumar mentioned about making us more human, right? So I think we've swung from a normal life to 100% virtual life,
Right.
and I think at some point we're going to go back to the median, right? So
Absolutely.
the pendulum is going to stabilize, and we're going to have a good hybrid way of doing everything, whether it's shopping or working or living, whatever else
I
it
miss
may
those
be.
days of taking a flight out and flying to somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And checking into a hotel.
Yeah.
Of one of the properties of Gary, right?
Yeah,
Check into one of the
exactly.
properties of Gary, right?
Very
Buy some
fine.
new pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very fine properties.
Absolutely,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Well, thank you all very much for
Appreciate it.
attending.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Sorry about the glitches at the beginning, but I think we really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully you guys did as well. So thank you all very much, and have an excellent afternoon.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Gary.
it.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Peter,
it.
as well.
Thank you.
Have a good
It's
day.
been a
You
real
guys.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank you.
For over 35 years, Lenovo has been a global technology partner, an end-to-end solutions and services provider, putting smarter technology in the hands of people who do amazing things with it. We partner to provide open solutions that meet the unique needs of our customers and deliver trusted expertise to serve the world's researchers, pioneers, and visionaries who harness data to transform businesses, improve industries, and solve humanity's greatest challenges. You are the data-centered, driven, ambitious people in every industry, at every scale, everywhere in the world. And Lenovo is dedicated to being your most trusted technology partner, because we know it's not just about what smarter technology powers, it's who. Smarter solutions for you, the data-centered. Smarter technology for all.